and welcome back to Restore Planet Podcast. Me, your host, Jack Cole. So today, I'm joined by Wouter Helmer, who's one of the co-founders of Rewilding Europe. So Wouter, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, so just to dive straight in. So you've been described as an instigator of modern ecology. So tell us how the approaches you have innovated differ from those previously and what different outcomes they have achieved.
Okay, well, that's a great question to start. Well, so of course it's not only about me. It's I've worked all my life in small, dedicated teams who are fully motivated to make a better place of our world for both people and nature, and that was the case in Ark Nature in the Netherlands, but also in Rewilding Europe, Rewilding America now. But personally, I have a quite optimistic character, to be honest, and when I finished my study in animal ecology, well, actually, optimism was not the kind of mindset I found back in conservation world. Actually, well, I think you call them trusts in the UK. Well, what I found in conservation was a lot of distrust, actually. Distrust towards society, that where we had the idea that society was always regarding economies more important than nature, and there was a lot of distrust against people that should be kept away from nature reserves. And actually, there was also a lot of distrust against nature itself. That had to be mowed and pruned and managed. And that was not quite actually what I was looking for when I finished my study. And with some friends of me, we thought maybe we could add some value and improve the results for conservation if we also build in some trust in nature to shape our landscapes, as nature has quite a track record in that, maybe some few billion years. Trust more people, and we thought, well, if people, if we invite people actually to our new areas, they probably will also appreciate nature more than when they were left out. And we were quite optimistic about society. We trust society to, in the long term, make those choices that are good for society, and very often nature is involved in those kind of solutions, as we'll tell you later. So that was the big change. We tried to actually add to the existing conservation, and the results were quite remarkable. Actually, we created quite spectacular landscapes in which ecosystems, as I said, shaped the landscapes, recovery of a lot of species. We saw really people using these landscapes as for recreation, but also start building up all kind of enterprises around these attractive areas. And we saw more and more socioeconomic sectors actually benefit from nature as part of their solution of their problems. And I'll tell more about that later. Yeah.
Great, good start. So what has also set you apart has been your readiness to work with partners outside of conservation itself. So what advantages has this brought your work that other practitioners could learn from?
Okay, yeah. Well, first, it's good to realize that changing the world doesn't start with convincing your friends. So we are always looking where we can find partners, even former enemies, so to say, and look how we can be of help to solve their problems, and the other way around. And how, and so we start to approach all kind of socioeconomic sectors where we thought nature could be a solution for their problems, actually. And we approached the water managers in the Netherlands first, because we thought we could solve their problem with flood management, with reducing flood risks. So the default solution is raising dikes, and we thought maybe it's better to lower the floodplains instead, and actually involve clay mining companies in this case to do the job, because clay is a renewable source in the Netherlands. We live in a delta. Every flood brings clay. We can use that for our buildings, and by concentrating the clay mining in the floodplains, we lower them, create space for rivers, and in the end create also tens of thousands of hectares of new rewilded areas along the rivers. And that actually was we had some serious floods in 1993, 1995. We had to evacuate 200,000 people. We had billions of damage, and that was the moment that actually our government made this approach. We called that at that time living rivers, and actually a national policy. So from that moment on, tens of thousands of hectares of floodplains are rewilded actually by our water managers. Well, in a similar way, we approached drink water companies to protect the source areas for their drinking water extraction by rewilding them actually, and by doing that, reducing their cost of cleaning the water. And we have a dozen of those areas in the Netherlands where this works. But we showed with some climate buffer projects that we could help agricultural areas with storing water in times of heavy rainfall and a supply of water actually in periods of droughts from these natural climate buffers, as we call them in the well, and as I said, we actually are at the moment exploring the relationship between nature and healthcare, where it looks like nature could really reduce the cost of healthcare if people are better connected to their green environment around their villages in the cities, and that actually, again, nature could be part of the solution for that socioeconomic issue. And on a European level, I think what we are doing at the moment, especially in the Mediterranean areas, we are trying to show that natural grazing, especially, could reduce the risk of large wildfires, which is really a problem at the moment. And by creating grazed mosaics, landscapes are less vulnerable for large-scale fires than closed canopy forest or closed shrublands, which are often the results of land abandonment in the south. So those are examples where we show that nature could be an ally for all kind of partners in society. And this brought us a lot. And I think first, respect from many sectors in society, that we are open-minded and looking to their problems, thinking with them for long-term, very often more cheap solutions than they are used to. Often people think in technical chemical solutions that work on the short term but are very expensive in the long term. We come with more sustainable solutions where nature plays a role. I think we get good response from local people, because apart from offering them new areas where they can walk and bike, we also actually create jobs in these areas, new bed and breakfast, jobs in tourism, recreation, ferries that start, all kind of, but also guiding tours, those kind of stuff. So by offering also not only natural areas, but also jobs and supporting local economies, we get a lot of support from that side. And of course, as an ecologist, very important that we create really spectacular natural areas that, because ecological processes manage our landscape, are much more sustainable in a way, less depending on our management, and less costly, therefore, to manage on a large scale. So all in all, also we make conservation more affordable in a way that we lower the costs by giving natural processes more the lead, and increase income for local people, but also for other sectors in society. So a better balance.
Yeah, absolutely. So just following on from that a little bit more. So what are some of the ways that? Oh, go ahead, please.
I just almost forgot. By operating like this, we of course also mobilize a lot of more money for conservation than we did in the past. So if we create now new natural areas, not using conservation money, but using money from water management, from healthcare, from drink water companies, from So
Right. So
quite
I was going
important.
to ask, how can wilding, not specifically wilding, but a lot of conservation and wilding projects be made more investable going forward? And you would say that is really sort of bringing in these other groups and generating a lot more money.
And show the business case of rewilding and how it could contribute to the interests of others. Make it attractive for investors because of their own interest in a specific sector, or from people who have to offset their carbon footprint. They can, of course, invest in nature areas, because we store a lot of carbon in our areas without planting any single tree. It's just so we save a lot of costs by letting nature do the job, but we store billions and billions of tons of carbon in our new nature areas that could be monetized and on the international market.
Great. Okay. So moving on from there, I've noticed that many influential and quite effective groups, such as Rewilding Europe, often start out with just one, or perhaps just a handful of individuals who then go on to make, great gains, a lot of influence, as Rewilding Europe and yourself now have. So what do you think this tells us a little bit about how practitioners should approach their goals in trying to make this wilder change possible?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that if you develop something new, and I think rewilding is still in development, it comes with also a lot of risks. You're testing a new bold vision. You have to test in practice, so you need also practical examples to show the wider audience how it looks like in reality, what your bold thoughts are about. You have to and vision and practice should always be aligned, that you improve your vision because the results of the practice, and the other way around, that you improve your practice because new insights come in. But that approach at the beginning of a new project, that requires quite a flexible and agile way of thinking and working, even a little bit opportunistic, I would say. And that will never work when you start with a too broad group of people. So you need pioneers to get it started like that. But that doesn't mean that you should not involve everybody around your ideas and projects, but you should do that in a clever way. So, for example, local people, they could be conservative when it comes to a change of their environment, but if you frame it in a nice way, you organize a nice day where they help removing fences in an area, releasing a group of animals, and the whole day with a party, good food and music, then you have them on board very often. And other politicians, for example, they never will take any risk. So don't put them.
Sorry, who are
politicians? They never want to take any risk.
Yeah, right.
But they love to be part of the success.
Yeah.
So it's always So if you open a new area, if you release a herd of animals or beaver or whatever, ask them to do it. It will help you to get them on your side as well. Scientists, well, if you ask them to predict the results of rewilding, you will never get started. But you need them to monitor the results of your work.
Yes.
So in this way, actually, you keep everybody involved without having the risk that things slow down. And actually, you create the conditions to scale up in a later stadium of your project. So that's how you, why you need to be pioneers at the beginning, but from the beginning have to think about how to involve important stakeholders in your work.
So when you think back over your quite extensive career, what are some of the events that stand out most to you? And also, when we were sat on the bus in the Netherlands, you were telling me about, forgive me if I've got it wrong, Zandwater?
Sorry,
Zand,
Zandmotor.
Zandwater. Tell us a little bit about Zandwater, which is sand engine.
Sand engine. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Tell me a
yeah.
little bit about that and some of the wider events that you like to look back on.
So shall I first explain the sand engine?
Please.
Okay, well, that's actually an idea that came up when we made a plan for our national water management agency, so to say, together with WWF. We created the vision "Growing with the Sea" was the name in the late 90s. And it's again, how can we let our delta grow with the sea? That was actually how to use peat generation, to use sediment coming from the rivers to build up our delta, but also how to protect our coast against the rising sea levels. And till that time, it was done every year. They pumped actually sand from the North Sea to the dunes, which cost a lot of money to do that. And we found out that there's where the Rhine comes into the North Sea, there's a flow of water into the sea, but comes back to the coast. It's a kind of circular wave of river water that goes back to the coast. And we thought, if you not bring sand every year to the coast, but you in one time you bring a lot of sand on this specific spot where the water stream comes back to the coast, the sea actually will do the job. And that's what we did. So we together, of course, with the water management and some scientists from an institute, a coastal institute, we created an amazing big heap of sand in front of the coast of the Netherlands. And the last 20 years, actually, the sea moved that to our coast. So it saved a lot of costs with the same result in the past. And during that time, 20 years, just a nice sand area with seals on it and birds. Just again a way of thinking where nature helps you to solve your problems.
Brilliant, pretty brilliant. And sorry, back to more widely, what are some of the things that really stick out for you over your career?
Okay, well, of course that differs a little bit during time and context. But I still have very warm feelings, to be honest, about actually the first 2.5 hectares we could rewild 35 years ago.
Right.
Imagine just with friends and family. Still, my mother was alive, helping there to removing barbed wire, and the release of 3 wild horses on those few hectares, filming it, presenting it to the annual conference of WWF at that time, and actually within a few months, getting hundreds of thousands of euros to scale up our wild idea about the Dutch floodplains. That was quite a thing. Somewhat later, in the neighboring area, our queen, on her 25th anniversary of being a queen, releasing 25 horses in a new rewilding area, and that action and the support for our approach she gave, that was very impressive for me. But also on warm summer evenings when I cycled back over the bridge to my hometown Nijmegen, seeing thousands of students enjoying life on river beaches against the new sand dunes that are formed there by our rivers, in an area which was a cornfield 20 years ago, and now with free roaming herds of horses with beaver, and all the people from the city enjoying life there. Goosebumps from that
special. Yeah, I can feel it too.
Experience. In a European context, I always have to think back to the first release of bison in the Southern Carpathians. It was an amazing event. Can you imagine? It's high in the mountains, hundreds of people gathered with trucks coming from different parts of Europe, bringing the first bison to this remote village. Bison blessed by the local priest, people singing about for the comeback of the bison, journalists from all over the world being there, and seeing those bison coming out of the truck. The first they did was tasting the soil. That's something every time when we release bison, they taste the soil. I don't know what that is, but it's interesting to see. And but then with those singing community, in the evening, people dancing together. So truck drivers with the Chinese journalists, with local people, with rewilders from all over Europe. That was quite impressive, but especially because it symbolized for me also the pride of that village to be the first one to have this on board, but also the hope of people that these, because it was an area with a lot of land abandonment, poor economy, and they saw this attention for their region, the comeback of the bison, the business programs we developed around that as a part of their future, their new future, and it worked like that. So we created a lot of jobs in that area related to bison tourism, so to say. So that was quite impressive again. And yeah, now that's completely exotic. I'm now working in America, and what for me that's a complete new world I'm entering, and especially the relationship with Native Americans that we are building up there, and the way they their relation with nature. That's something completely different from what we know in the West. So to say. It's based on so much experience and thousands of years of storytelling. Yeah. And one of the moments but also, yeah, I remember that we once entered an area quite overgrazed by horses. And one of our team members, he's Daryl Marcus, he's a great grandson of the famous Indian warrior Crazy Horse. And he excused himself. He said, I have to say a prayer for the horses in this area because they are living in poor conditions. And he climbed up a Sundance Hill, and he started praying. And imagine it's completely silent. 360 degrees around, nothing, just silence. He started praying, and then suddenly far away you heard, and when he was praying, 150 horses came running from more than 1 kilometer up to that hill to this man. That's yeah. If you talk about moments that makes you cry almost, that those moments I've experienced there very often. And yeah, but having said that, again, I'm an ecologist, so I also every time celebrate when I see examples of actually the amazing wildlife comeback we are experiencing in Europe as a whole. So whether it's white-tailed eagles or black storks or beaver or wild cat or now wolves in the Netherlands, that motivates me so much to continue our work, because it shows that nature is resilient, that conservation and rewilding works, that we are doing, and that it's more and more appreciated actually by people. So I think most of that wildlife comebacks are very well appreciated by our modern, of course, very urban society. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and I would actually like to come back to the Native Americans and the cowboys in just a second, but just before that, going back a little bit to sort of, Europe and some of the work that you've got going on, looking to the future. Obviously, of course, rewilding, making Europe wilder, and a large part of that is to work with infrastructure groups to make it more easy for isolated populations to reconnect, and for the health of biodiversity, genetic diversity. And tell us a little bit about your work with Dam Removal Europe. Is that the name?
Yeah, Dam Removal Europe is quite a fast-growing movement. Okay, it's a little bit a legacy from my time at Rewilding Europe. So okay, so Dam Removal Europe is set up by a coalition of the World Fish Migration Foundation, WWF, the Nature Conservancy, Rewilding Europe, but also the European Rivers Network and the Rivers Trust in the UK. And actually, well, you can imagine that removing a dam is one of the most effective ways of rewilding we can have. And so by taking a dam out of a river, you restore the whole sediment flow, you improve water quality, and of course you restore migration of fish up and downstream. And yeah, but then we have more than 1 million dams in European rivers. Of course, most of them are still functional as a power, hydropower for irrigation and so on. But there are also hundreds of thousands obsolete dams. And of course, that's quite low-hanging fruit actually to take out, and by doing that, rewilding complete river systems. And well, that's actually what we are trying to do now. There's a big fund coming from the UK to subsidize dam removal, and my role is quite limited actually. I'm supporting them in fundraising, and so that's what I'm doing a few times a year to get some funds on board of this new movement, and actually to help them by building business models around dam removal. So where we show that taking out the dam is also from an economic perspective makes more sense than keeping the dam because of yeah, the risk. For example, if a dam breaks, you can have a disaster downstream. So taking it out timely could save those costs of a damage. But of course, creating a new sport fishing, fly fishing economy after removal of a dam could very often could be much more attractive also financially than having a dam in the river. So so I created about 12 business models where the removal of dams actually is more attractive than keeping them.
Sorry to the timeline sort of jumping back and forth a bit, but back to the no, it's not at all. It's my questioning. Back to the United States now with the Native Americans. And you mentioned their lovely story about the horses. So what's quite interesting about this, what you've been telling me, is that you've got essentially cowboys and, to use the old word, Indians working together. Of course, you have somewhat checkered history. Can you describe a little bit about what that's like, bringing those two different groups together to work on something like rewilding? Yeah.
We like to think in terms of cowboys and Indians, but it's a little bit more diverse. So there's a very interesting coalition coming up in the Americas now at the moment, from conservationists, wild horse protectors, indeed native tribes, but also private landowners, ranchers, and communication teams from Hollywood and they joined forces to actually show an alternative for the default model we have at the moment for federal land, which is for almost 90% just leased to cattle ranchers. So we think we can offer from a management model, rewilding, which offers more public services on federal land than the current monoculture of cattle ranches. And that's about climate adaptation, carbon storage, wildfire prevention, biodiversity, tourism.
Dakotas, have I got that right? In North and South Dakota, is that the area?
Yeah. So the ambition is bigger, but again, you have a vision and you need pilot projects. And our first pilot projects are in North and South Dakota. One with an Indian tribe, the Standing Rock tribe. And it's about a big area where we test the grazing of bison combined with wild horses. And in North Dakota, it's a coalition with a rancher's family, the Silvernagle family, where we show how natural grazing in a rotation system can also improve the quality of crop areas. So it's actually a range that uses free roaming horses to improve the quality of the whole agricultural area as well. And both projects help each other in building up herds and technical management, infrastructure, that kind of thing. And by doing that, actually, we show that rewilding is not to be placed in the blue or red corner of America, but it's both for Republicans and Democratic people in a better way of managing both private and federal land than is done at the moment. And we are building now evidence for that in those two pilot projects, and hope to scale up now to Idaho in the future. But that's the next podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So rewilding, especially in the UK and much of the West, is very much in vogue. But you've of course been there, from the beginning, and just like to know how you'd like to see things continue to evolve in the coming years. Are there any particular trends that you've noticed, or as rewilding is, as you mentioned, is developing in its own right, what are some of the forefront new things that are beginning to materialize, or new ideas, or
yeah,
trends?
I already mentioned the relationship with healthcare.
Oh, of course, at the
but
yeah.
more principally, so it's really you have to realize that we should really should continue to ensure that nature is part of the solution for modern socio-economic issues. That mindset should be in conservationists, and that also means that you have to be agile and reinvent yourself every time that the society changes, that climate changes, that nature changes itself. So change is the where you have to cope with, which means that you are never finished. The solutions you come up with today are not the solutions of tomorrow. So you can never sit back and say, okay, the work is done. It's there is no blueprint for every new rewilding area. You have to think again about the context. What are the needs of the people? What socioeconomic issues are playing? What's the ecosystem on that place? And it's always different. So if we as rewilders keep that mindset, that agile, flexible, opportunistic mindset, and offering ourselves as part of the solution of other groups as well, then yeah, we can continue our work, can scale up our work, and secure actually the connection between modern society and wild nature.
And finally, Walter, you said that you're retired. It doesn't really seem that way so much to me, with how busy you are and all the exciting things you're involved with. Where could people find you, follow your work, see what you're up to, support you? Where would they be able to find you, or they want to get in touch with you?
So I'm retired as a manager and a director, but I'm not retired as a rewilder.
Yeah.
So I will continue to give my help to people, especially startups, people who try to test new ideas. I love to help them setting up things. If they have no money, I do it as a volunteer. If they are a commercial party, they get an invoice. But for the rest, I'm just, people could also contribute to these new initiatives via Rewilding Europe, via Rewilding America now. There, if they do that, the money will be used.
Perfect. Walter, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jack.